The afternoon had started beautifully. Amara had opened all the windows in the living room, letting in the kind of lazy Sunday breeze that made you forget there was a world outside. She had brewed a fresh pot of hibiscus tea, set out a plate of chin-chin and sliced oranges, and was already laughing before her best friend Priscilla even knocked on the door. They had known each other since secondary school. 22 years of friendship, the kind that had survived distance, marriage, children, arguments, and all the quiet in-betweens. Priscilla was the sort of woman who filled a room not because she was loud, but because she carried warmth with her like a perfume. She walked in wearing a yellow Ankara blouse, her locks pinned up high, and she was grinning already, which meant she had news. "Tell me," Amara said before Priscilla had even sat down. "Chukwuemeka bought me a watch," Priscilla said, dropping onto the sofa and pulling back her sleeve to reveal a slender gold piece. "For no reason, just because." Amara gasped appropriately, reached over, turned her friend's wrist under the light. "He didn't even need an occasion?" "Not a single one. He just said he saw it and thought of me." "Hey, chum." Amara leaned back against the armrest, smiling, but with something faintly teasing behind her eyes. "Chukwuemeka is always doing things like that, isn't he?" "He is," Priscilla said with a sigh that was really just a disguised boast. "You married well." "We both married well, Amara. Stop it." They laughed and settled into the kind of conversation that had no real structure, drifting from Priscilla's youngest child's school results, to the neighbor who had built a fence 2 inches past his boundary, to the rising price of tomatoes, to a mutual friend's new business venture that everyone privately suspected would not survive. Teacups were refilled. The chin-chin disappeared faster than either of them noticed. It was during one of those easy, meandering pauses that the topic drifted back to husbands. "You know," Priscilla said, tilting her head as she studied the framed photo on the wall, "Amara and her husband, Toby Chukwu, on their wedding day. Both of them caught mid-laugh at something happening off-frame. Toby has always had such a kind face." "He does," Amara agreed, barely looking at the photo. She had stopped really seeing it years ago, the way you stopped seeing the furniture. "Chukwuemeka is handsome too, of course," Priscilla said, and then added with the easy casualness of someone who had never thought twice about the words, "But I've always thought he was more handsome than Toby. Physically, I mean, just in that sharp, put-together way." Amara snorted. She gestured lazily at the same photo. "I mean, honestly? You might not be wrong. Your husband has always been the more conventionally good-looking one. I tell Toby that myself sometimes." They laughed again, and Priscilla shook her head. "Only you would say that, Amara." "It's not an insult. Toby is handsome in his own way. He's got those eyes. And he's funny, which is worth more than cheekbones." "True," Priscilla said. "Chukwuemeka has no sense of humor at all. He laughs at his own jokes, and no one else does." More laughter, more tea. The afternoon continued, and neither woman gave the exchange another thought. What Amara did not know, what she had no way of knowing from where she sat facing the window, was that Toby Chukwu had come home early. He had been planning to surprise her. There was a small blue gift bag in his hand. Inside, it was a bottle of the perfume she had mentioned 3 weeks ago while they were walking through a shopping complex. She had paused at a counter, spritzed a tester on her wrist, held it to his nose and said, "This one. Remember this one." He had taken a photo of the bottle on his phone and said nothing at the time, but he had gone back that Tuesday while she was at work and bought it. He was not a man of grand gestures. Toby Chukwu Adeyemi was the sort of man whose love language was quiet and consistent. A cup of tea brought to you without being asked, a coat laid on your shoulders when the harmattan came in sharp, a hand on the small of your back in a crowd, because he never wanted you to feel alone, even when surrounded by people. He did not write poems. He did not plan elaborate surprises. But he noticed things, and he remembered them, and he acted on them when no one expected it. He had come in through the back door because his key was easier in that lock, and he had heard the voices before he saw anyone. He recognized Priscilla's laugh first, then Amara's. He had smiled to himself, shifting the gift bag to his other hand, intending to slip into the kitchen, put the bag on the counter, and appear casually in the doorway, as though he hadn't planned anything. He loved that. The small theater of pretending not to care about a thing that he actually cared about very much. He was just inside the kitchen when he heard his name. Has always been the more conventionally good-looking one. I tell Toby that myself sometimes. He went still. He was not a man who eavesdropped. He had never once pressed his ear to a door, never gone looking through a phone. It simply wasn't in him. But his feet had stopped moving on their own, and he was standing there with the gift bag hanging from his fingers, and the words were already inside him, before he could make the choice not to hear them. He didn't hear everything. He caught enough. He heard his name measured against another man's name, and found lighter. He heard it said with a laugh, not cruelly, not even unkindly, but lightly. The way you might remark that a neighbor's garden is neater than yours, a factual observation, a comparison offered up as easily as you'd comment on the weather. He heard his wife agree. He stood in the kitchen for perhaps 30 seconds, which felt much longer. He set the blue gift bag down on the kitchen counter very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are not entirely steady. He did not look at it again. He went back out through the back door, sat down in the small covered yard behind the house, and stayed there for a while, doing nothing in particular. By the time Priscilla left, an hour later, calling her goodbyes toward the kitchen where she assumed Toby must have arrived at some point because his car was now in the drive, Toby Chukwu was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water, looking like a man who had simply been home for a while. Amara came into the kitchen, still smiling from the goodbye. "You're back early," she said, and kissed him on the top of his head as she passed. "Traffic cleared up," he said. She opened the fridge, considered it, closed it again. "Did you eat?" "I'll eat later." She turned and noticed the blue bag on the counter. Her face changed immediately, that specific softening that happened when she was genuinely surprised. "Toby, what is this?" "Just something I saw." She opened it, lifted out the perfume, and her mouth fell open. "This is the one from the shopping complex. You remembered." "I remember things," he said simply. She crossed to him, and he let her hug him, and he held her back, and nothing was said for a moment. But something was different, and Amara, who had known this man for 11 years, felt it. A faint distance behind the embrace, like a room that had been fully furnished, but had one curtain drawn. She pulled back and looked at him. "Are you all right?" "Fine," he said. She looked at him a moment longer, the way women look at men they have studied for over a decade, reading the text beneath the text. He did not look away. He did not give her anything to confirm or deny. He just looked back at her with his calm, steady eyes, and she almost let it go. Almost. "Something is wrong," she said. "I'm tired." "Toby." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I came in through the back. I heard some of your conversation with Priscilla." The sentence landed in the kitchen like a stone dropped into still water, and Amara watched the circles spread outward, even before she fully understood what he meant. "I wasn't eavesdropping," he said, and she believed him instantly, because that was simply not who he was. "I was coming in. I heard enough." She replayed the afternoon quickly, searching. When she reached the part about Chukwuemeka being more handsome, she felt her stomach turn over. "Toby," she said carefully, "we were just talking. You know how women talk. It meant nothing." "I know," he said. "We weren't being serious." "I know you weren't being serious," he said again, and his voice was still calm, which somehow made it worse. "That's the part I keep thinking about." She sat down across from him at the table. "What does that mean?" He turned the glass of water in his hands slowly. "It means it was easy for you. It means it cost you nothing to say it. You didn't even consider, you didn't wonder, whether the words could land somewhere, because to you they were just words." "They were just words," she said. "I wasn't comparing you badly. I said you had kind eyes. I said you were funny. I said that was worth more. Amara, his voice was not raised. It would almost have been better if it were raised. I was standing in the kitchen with a gift I bought for you, and I heard my wife tell her friend that her husband was better looking than me. It doesn't matter what came after. The first thing, that was what stayed. Silence stretched between them. I've never done that, he said quietly. I have never, in 11 years, sat with another man and measured you against someone else. I have never laughed with a friend about what another woman has that you don't. Not because I thought it would hurt you, but because it simply never occurred to me to do it. You are not a thing to be compared. That's not how I see you. Amara felt something shift in her chest. It was not guilt exactly, though guilt was part of it. It was something more layered, the recognition of a pattern she had not realized was a pattern. The casual way she sometimes spoke about Toby Chukwu to Priscilla, the jokes she made at his expense that were small enough to be harmless, but numerous enough perhaps to add up to something. I'm sorry, she said. I know. Toby, I genuinely didn't think. That's what I'm telling you, he said, not unkindly. You didn't think, I understand. But I need you to understand that when you don't think, when it's that easy to say, what does that mean about how you see me? When we are alone, I feel like I am everything to you. And then I hear how you speak about me when I'm not there. And I wonder which one is the truth. It was the most he had said at once in a very long time, and the words didn't come out with heat or bitterness. They came out with the careful steadiness of a man who had spent time in a yard deciding whether to say them or swallow them, and had chosen to say them. The way you see me in private, he continued, should be the same as the way you speak about me in public. That's what respect is. Not big declarations, just consistency. You speaking about me the way you would want me to speak about you. That night, they did not argue. What they had instead was harder than an argument, a long, honest conversation that went past midnight and covered things they had both quietly been carrying. Amara talked about how she had fallen into the habit of light complaint and casual comparison, because it was the language of the friendship she was part of. Women venting together, women laughing together, finding solidarity in the small imperfections of their husbands. It had never felt malicious, because it wasn't malicious. But she heard herself explaining it and understood, in the middle of her own explanation, how thin the defense was. Toby Chukwu talked about how small diminishments accumulated, how they didn't break a man all at once, but did something quieter. Made him doubt the security of the love he thought he had. Made him wonder what was said in rooms he wasn't in. Made him feel like a subject being reviewed rather than a partner being cherished. I don't need you to think I'm the best-looking man in the world, he said. I'm not 17. I know what I look like, but I need to know that when I am not there, you protect me. That you don't offer me up for laughs. I will, she said. Toby, I will. Not because I'm asking you to lie. Not because you can never admit to your friends that I frustrate you, or that I leave my socks wrong side out, or forget to replace the water bottle. I'm talking about something specific, about being measured, about being made less. She reached across the table and took his hand. I saw you come in through the back, she said quietly. I didn't see you, but I felt it. I felt the door. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know you'd heard. She paused. What were you doing in the kitchen? He glanced toward the counter, where the blue bag still sat. She looked at it, back at him. Toby, she said softly. It's just perfume, he said. She left the table, took the perfume from the bag again, held it. Then she came back and sat beside him rather than across from him, close enough that their arms touched. I want to tell you something, she said, and I want you to believe me. He waited. There is no version of my life I would choose over this one. There is no man I would rather come home to. I know I don't always. I know the words don't always match what I feel. I got comfortable. Comfortable in a bad way. The way you stop saying grace before a meal. Not because you're ungrateful, but because you've eaten so many meals that gratitude starts to feel like a given. She turned to look at him. It's not a given. You are not a given. And I'm sorry I ever spoke about you as though you were less than what you are to me. Toby Chukwu was quiet for a long time. Outside, a generator from the house 2 streets over hummed steadily. I don't want to stay in this tonight, he finally said. I've said what I needed to say. I believe you. I needed you to know. I needed it to not go unsaid. I'm glad you said it, Amara told him. He nodded slowly. She rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move away. In the weeks that followed, things did not change dramatically. There was no sudden new version of their marriage, no overnight transformation. What changed was smaller and more durable than that. Amara noticed herself now, in the moments before she spoke. Not paralyzing herself with caution, not performing an edited version of marriage, but pausing, just a beat, to consider whether the thing she was about to say was true, necessary, and kind. She found that most of the time she could still say the thing she wanted to say, but occasionally, in that beat of pause, she would catch a sentence on its way out and recognize it for what it was. Not honest expression, but performance. Solidarity through diminishment. A laugh at someone else's cost. She stopped buying into that particular currency. She also said it to Toby Chukwu more, the things she usually only felt. She told him when a decision he made impressed her. She said it directly, without cushioning it in a joke or burying it in context. She told Priscilla, the next time they met, that Toby had surprised her with perfume for no reason. She let the goodness of him be visible. And Toby Chukwu, who had always been a steady man, a private man, a man who expressed love through presence and small acts, began in his own way to speak more too. He told her once, on an unremarkable Tuesday, that the sound of her laughing in the kitchen was one of his favorite sounds in the world. He said it the way he said most things, plainly, without decoration, looking at her so she knew he meant it. She didn't know what to do with it for a moment. Then she laughed, and it was the sound he had just described, and they both recognized it at the same time, and something warm and circular happened between them. 3 months after that Sunday afternoon, Priscilla came to visit again. They sat in the same living room, drank tea from the same cups, talked about the same neighborhood and the same complicated people. The chin-chin was even the same brand. At some point, Priscilla said, "You seem different." Different how? I don't know exactly. Softer. Not soft. You were always soft. More settled. Like something that was slightly off has been fixed. Amara considered this. Something was slightly off, she said. What? She smiled and shook her head. Nothing big. Just something I needed to pay attention to. Priscilla looked at her for a moment, the way old friends do, reading the surface and the depth simultaneously. Toby? Toby, Amara confirmed. Good trouble or bad trouble? Real trouble, Amara said. The kind that means something. Priscilla nodded slowly. She understood. She had been married long enough to know the difference between the conflicts that erode a marriage and the ones that reinforce it. The ones that feel like destruction while they're happening, but leave the foundation stronger for having happened. The ones where someone says the thing that needed saying and someone else hears it. He's a good man, Priscilla said. He is, Amara said. She looked at the wedding photo on the wall, really looked at it, the way she hadn't in years. Toby Chukwu, mid-laugh, eyes creased, caught in the most natural moment of himself. He really, really is. And she meant it with her whole chest, not just with her mouth. That, she had come to understand, was the only kind of meaning that counted.